Gib Staunton is the founder and principal of Staunton Career Advisors. At Staunton Career Advisors, Gib works with young adults who are entering the workforce for the first time or switching careers to help them find a field that best matches their interests and aptitude. Gib also helps them navigate the process of building a resume, writing an effective cover letter, and developing strong interview skills. Gib also works with mid-career individuals in an executive coaching capacity to improve their organizational, management, and leadership skills. Prior to founding Staunton Career Advisors, Gib capped off a successful career in educational leadership as Director of Lower School Admissions at St. Anne's Belfield School. Gib graduated from the University of Virginia with a BS in elementary education and teaching, and currently resides in the Charlottesville area. Staunton Career Advisors is the exclusive provider of early career advising for Waymarker community members. To book an engagement, you can email Gib directly at the email address in the show notes or the YouTube description.
So Gib, thanks so much for being here. I was hoping we could just start right away with kind of your origin story, or at least the brief version. I know we all have different variations. Where are you from? What you were into as a kid? Those kinds of things.
I was very lucky to grow up on a horse farm outside of Richmond, Virginia, and with a brother and a sister, and we would go out and play and ride our horses down to the river during the day. And my parents said, don't come back till sunset. So very lucky. I've always been into sports. I rode competitively growing up, and I've just always loved sports. So that's been a big part of my life. Moved to Boston and then moved back to Virginia after a while, and happily calling this home now.
That's awesome. I think I've driven through Virginia, but haven't stopped there. But love Boston. It's a great city. And I can definitely I get the weather point. I was actually there for a conference during Sandy, and our hotel lost power and my flight was canceled, and we were there for 5 days. So other than that, it was a great experience. But yeah.
Yes. The after 10 years, that long winter got to me. So as you can see from my this is my home office. Virginia is quite beautiful.
Yeah, you definitely win the background award for Zoom today. So yeah, speaking of Virginia, what are you all doing outside of work typically?
Believe it or not, I play a lot of sports. Give anything with a racket, I'll play. Tennis, pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the country. Golf. I also play competitive bridge, which is I'm one of the youngest people doing that. But I love games. So, and obviously lots of family time. So
yeah, absolutely. I worked for a software company that we had a brand that specialized in racket sports, basically like management software for those clubs, and pickleball was a huge trend. So
yeah, it's really blowing up. It's crazy.
For sure. Can we jump into your business, Staunton Career Advisors, and can you just kind of talk about what it is that you do there and talk about the business a little bit?
Absolutely. So 5 years ago, I came up with this idea, and I just saw that there was a need, having helped launch 4 children, and I saw that there was a need and it wasn't being met. So kind of what obviously what you're addressing from also a different angle. I saw that kids were having trouble getting launched out of school, not really knowing what they wanted to do. And then also some of them were mid-career and realized they just took a job because someone gave it to them and they didn't know what they wanted to do, what they really wanted to do. So I really focus in. It's very individual, what I do, client by client, which I love, but helping them figure out what they want to do and then how to get there. So teaching them giving them a toolkit for how to, write an effective cover letter. What should your resume look like? There's a zillion, you look on the internet, there's a zillion, resume models, but how do you know which one to pick? So also teaching them how to network, which is one of the hardest things. I think people are afraid that they're asking too much of a favor from someone. So, but you really have to learn how to network. 80% of all jobs come through networking. So, and it may not be a friend of your parents. People think that you have to, tap out on that. It's just getting to connecting with people through where you went to college or anything. And then helping them, I think the most important part is helping them with their interview skills. So for me, that's the most satisfying part, helping them I individualize every interview and then hopefully let them show their best self. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
I love it. You said that point about 80% of placements usually result from networking of some kind. That feels so right to me personally. Like I'm at my fourth stop here, and I think so 3 of those 4, so 75% of my personal experience at least has been through connections or even like just unsolicited emails asking for guidance. And so for my end, it's like, obviously be nice and thankful and don't be entitled, but at the same time, don't be afraid to ask for a connection. So that's
Absolutely. I think that's what most young people get caught up on, that they're afraid they're going to be imposing too much. And you're just asking for an introduction or a coffee, and someone did it for them. So that's definitely one of my big tips. And my second job came from networking. Meeting you came from networking, and my whole business has been word of mouth so far. I've not advertised one second. So that's networking. And I'm 5 years in. So
yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't have to be like this rigid thing where you like say, okay, now I'm going to network. It could be, it's something that compounds, I think. So I guess I'm 10 years into this, and I can give people opportunities just kind of organically. Like if they ask now, I know exactly who to connect them with. And the same thing for me personally. Like if I want to explore something, I know who I could go to within my network to get more information about that opportunity. So
absolutely. And some people don't even realize, they think they're not going to be helpful. The person who's being asked.
yeah,
They go to coffee and they're like, oh, I do have one person you could talk to, or I'll send an email for you, because also if you have that, if a person does work at a company that you want to work to and you get them to put in, reference code for you, that's really going to make a huge difference. Also, especially at a bigger company.
Yeah, that's a good point. Could you talk more about that real quickly? So as an example, and I think this is what you're referring to, at a software company I used to work at, we had our own referral links and referral codes that we could give people if we felt like they were a good fit for a role, and that kind of bumps you up, because some of these jobs, I mean, they might be getting over 1,000 applications. If you're the best candidate in the world, it's really hard to break through.
Absolutely. So that's where 2 things come in. Those reference codes, if someone is willing to, put you in, either refer you, whatever the system is for that company, it pretty much assures that your resume will get looked at, right? Your resume and your cover letter will get looked at. And that's pretty much what you need. Sometimes just someone to look at it and see if you're a good fit. The other thing is using keywords on your resume that match the job description, not overdoing it, but making sure some could get snagged by a computer. But trying to figure out the reference, if you could get referred, that definitely makes a huge difference. And of course, you have to take advantage of it with a great cover letter. But
yeah, absolutely. That makes me think, just if I zoom out a little bit, is there a piece of advice that you find yourself giving the most often?
I think the most pervasive advice that I give is to really try to be yourself. Don't be afraid to be yourself. Be direct, be authentic. In your cover letter and your interview, you want to try to paint a picture of who you are and what skills you bring to the job. I think too many young people these days are trying to be something that they think the company wants, rather than trying to tell them who they actually are. And they're not really confident in describing who they are. So part of what I do with them is work through that and get them to elaborate and talk about, and be able to articulate who they are. It's very challenging. There's so much noise coming in from social media, and we're so worried about status and title and money instead of we trying to find the right fit for us, just like going to college, right? Like not everyone's going to get into the top colleges, but there's great colleges out there that could be the perfect fit for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and we talked about this a little bit, but in general, it's very hard to get a job online. Like if you don't have an in, not always, but if you're applying for a job that's been posted on LinkedIn for like 15 days, there's like a really low percentage chance that you're going to even get looked at, let alone an interview and an offer. And so maybe it's what we already talked about, but how do you advise clients on kind of breaking through that noise and landing an opportunity ultimately?
I think another part of it, I think the networking, seeing if you can find someone, if you're determined to work at that company, trying to find someone that works there, that went to the same college you went to, or just messaging someone. I'd love to talk to you about the company. That might get you a referral, might get you a leg up. Also, so I think networking is a huge one, but also making sure you do your research. Like these companies can tell when you're sending a generic cover letter. If you really want to work at that company, do your research, find an article that's about them, reference that in your cover letter, reference that in your email to the person you're trying to network with. Show them that that what they're all about and what they need. So one of the biggest second tip I would have, although I want people to totally be themselves, is also realize that the company is hiring the people and they're looking for a specific person. So they need to make sure you have that skill set, and you need to be direct and show them that you know what they're looking for. So convey that most directly in your cover letter.
Perfect. And now I'm thinking of a question that I didn't run your way, but so let's say I have an interview on Monday. Today's Friday. So this is a family member's scenario, actually. I won't call her out. So I just talked to her today. She has an interview next week. And you mentioned interviews. What is the main thing she needs to go into that interview focused on? What should she do this weekend to prepare for that interview?
Well, probably it's best to get someone, most interviews most interviews are still fairly conventional, right? Like Google and some of the high tech companies have a different format, but most of them have gone away from a little bit of the crazy questions. Most of them want to find out about your teamwork, your communication skills, your leadership, your flexibility, adaptability, and also like what specific skills you bring. But it's best to have someone else ask you some of these questions, right? Like Google some generic, behavioral questions, and have someone else like Jimmy ask you these questions over the weekend. But the person who's helping you interview you really needs to be honest. Are your answers too long-winded? Are you going on too long? Because people have short attention spans, right? That's a 15 or 20 minute first round interview. You can't talk for 5 minutes, so they'll just never get to ask all the questions they want to ask. So you have to be concise in your interview, the way you answer the question. Give a specific example, and then stop and let them ask the next question.
For sure. That makes a ton of sense. I'll pass along that recommendation.
I'll send you some cheat stuff later.
Yeah.
But I also feel the same way about cover letters. I'm finding that a lot of, just to throw this in there because it's along the same lines, that a lot of times cover letters are just way too long. People don't, we all know that everyone's doing 1,000 things a day. And if you pick up a cover letter that's 3/4 of a page long, you might not read it. But if it's 10 lines long or 12 lines long, you're going to read it, right? And if they're very concise and direct in their message, then you've got a good shot of them reading the whole thing. So make sure you're delivering your message with a bang.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think I'm laughing because I'm thinking about when I first tried to break into the technology industry. I saw I'm a career changer, and I wanted to be in it so bad. And I was definitely insecure for a variety of like background reasons, but I was also just a little like immature emotionally. And so my cover letters were probably 2 pages, super passionate, 0 value. and
You're not alone.
yeah, I'm sure. And I did have a couple of like phone screens, and I think I almost over prepared, and almost not over prepared, but over scripted. And so I thought like, this is exactly what I'm going to say. But when you do that and they ask you just normal questions, you either don't have an answer, or you just give them the answer that you scripted and it makes 0 sense. So it's almost like you either know the material or you don't.
Yeah.
And if you know the material and you just be yourself, you're a lot more likable and kind of come off as like higher EQ and that kind of thing. So that was a huge turning point for me, but it took me being like 30 to actually get it. So
it's so true. I'm giving a lot of advice that I'm sure I didn't take myself either. But and another on that point, Jimmy, one of the things I also suggest is when you are preparing like in these more general buckets, right? Like where's an example of leadership? What's an example of a tough communication problem you had to solve? Just write vocabulary words as a reminder about what you want your answer to be, or a blurb, 3 or 4 words long. Never write out whole sentences, because then you'll feel like you have to memorize that. Like you said, it'll be stiff. It won't be yourself.
For sure. And the nice thing about as you do progress in your career is you have experiences to pull from authentically. Like in some ways, if you ask that question, like when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I have 3 things in the back of my mind already. Which one works for this scenario? And so that's the good news about getting older, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then having someone like, you picking a mentor, someone who can work with you, someone who will, like having, someone like you or me in their life who can give them advice about, I think this example would be a little bit better than that example, right? You still need to present your best self. So they usually end up talking through the examples they have, and you can help them pick the best one. Same as like when they talk about, what's your biggest weakness? I mean, people don't really phrase it that way anymore, but how to give the best version of that answer where you're not being brutally honest about the thing you're terrible at.
Yeah, there's a spectrum of that answer. It's like, all right, you don't want to tell them you like to steal things. That's not a good answer. That's not a good weakness, but you also don't want to like do a humble brag where it's like, I work too hard. Like that's not a good answer either.
I'm a perfectionist. Exactly.
Yeah. So Gib, I think we could probably talk for hours, as we should. It's an important topic with a lot of different angles. But I will near the end here with the question I ask everyone, and that's, what is the kindest thing someone's done for you at work or work related? So boss, coworker, just anything like that.
I've been lucky to work with a lot of great people, and I love this question, Jimmy. So I know it's going to sound crazy, but it goes back to one of my teaching jobs in Boston. And it's stuck with me to this day. So I was a first grade teacher, and my headmistress would put a note in my box every week about something that she noticed that I was doing. And I saved, when I left there, I moved back to Virginia. It was 10 years later. I found a folder with all of these notes because it meant that much to me that someone recognized what I had done. And still to this day, I have a folder called Client Thank You. So when a parent thanks me for working with their child, or someone writes me and tells me how it made a difference, I save all of them. It means so much that someone appreciates you. So I think that that's another part of networking, looping back to networking, which is make sure that you thank the people who helped you along the way and keep them. And when you talk about it being 4 steps later removed, but remember to let the person who originally connected you to that person know that you got a job at, whatever company it is. It really means a lot. And then when someone asks you, make sure you pay it forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that answer. I think intentionality, no matter what end of a relationship you're on, is so important, and it can last decades. One of my best friends is, he's an executive for a sports team, and when you get to know him, you can understand why he's reached the level he's at. He sends mails, cards for everything. I mean, family members for certain events, nothing. This guy remembers everything because he has a notebook that he writes everything in. Probably 1,000 people to keep in touch with. Wow. But like no doubt, like you'll get a card from him if something happens in your life. So
no, life is
thank you cards.
Yeah, exactly. Life is about relationships, right? And gratitude. And if you're grateful for things, you're a happier person. So
totally.
And you and I are testament to how important relationships are.
That's right. Gib, how can our listeners and community members learn more about you, or like even engage with Staunton Career Advisors?
They can just send me an email if they want. My website is actually in progress right now. I am changing it up a little bit. But they can reach all my contact information. But Gib at StauntonCareerAdvisors.com is the way if anyone wants to reach out to me, and I'll get back to them as soon as I can. So
cool.
I just love working with people and seeing if I can help them on their journey. And I appreciate awesome. You connecting me to your community.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. I'll include that in the show notes, how people can get in touch with you. But yeah, I think it's just me being self-aware. Like I like to focus on this stuff, connecting people to opportunities, connecting organizations to the right people at a high level. But if you're listening and you want like very targeted advice, like what we've talked about in this episode, I think it makes more sense to talk to Gib, and that's why we're talking now. So I would definitely recommend that.
Thank you so much, Jimmy, for giving me this platform to share what I do.
Absolutely. Well, I suspect we'll be talking again, maybe even produce some more content, maybe post some resources on the Waymarker website. But until next time, Gib, thanks again. Look forward to publishing this and helping people with it. So
thanks so much. Thanks. And thanks for all you do, Jimmy.
Thank you. All right. Bye.
Bye.